What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing all right out there. If you've never been here before, please check out plenty of the videos I have up. Hit the subscribe button. Everybody else, welcome back. I appreciate you. Instead of telling a story today, what I'm going to do is read to you some information because I want to talk to you about something. Many people have a outlook, a view, an opinion of people that are incarcerated. Many people say that they are the bottom of the barrel. They are a lost cause. They're animals. The media portrays people in prison as vicious animals as well. And a lot of people have the opinion or fall under the impression that they don't belong in society. Uh, and when you cast people in a group like that, you're making a mistake. That is done out of ignorance. If one priest molests a child, or are all the priests child molesters? If one cop rapes a woman, are all cops pieces of garbage? You can't say that. You can't say that all prisoners are no good. A lot of times when a prisoner, when a human being is charged with murder, you will see in the comment section, put him away for the rest of his life, when the person that is making that comment has no idea of the circumstances. Circumstances are extremely important, okay? And that's like saying that a person who gets into a bar fight with two willing participants that are fighting and kills the man in the parking lot, not intentionally, should get the same amount of time of someone who is robbing a bank and kills the teller. Of course, they shouldn't get the same amount of time. They're both charged with murder, but the circumstances are different. What I'm saying is the circumstances for everybody that are incarcerated is different. There are some very bad people who are in the prison system. And I agree that there are some people who should probably never be let out of prison. I am the first to say that. Those individuals do exist. But until you become a critical thinker and learn how to look at things from different angles, learn how to take in facts, learn how to form an objective opinion based on the things that transpired in a criminal case, you can't just say, that person's no good, put him away for life. And the point that I'm making in this video is that the media portrays the men incarcerated as no good, as no good for society. And a lot of the people that are incarcerated may have only committed that crime one time and they got put away for 10 years, 15 years. And I'm going to explain some politicians to you because the list is endless. I have to read it to you because the information is so extensive, there's no way for me to remember it. But what I want you to do is understand that it is the people in power and the people that are putting people in prison are more evil, more criminal, and more wicked than the people that they are putting away. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm going to give you some facts. I'm going to look at a little list of United States federal officials convicted of corruption offenses, just corruption offenses, which means they are a corrupt individual. I'm going to take you back in time for a little bit, and we're going to go to someone like Judge Robert Archbald. This is 1913, convicted of bribery, a Republican. Daniel Brewster, a senator from Maryland, found guilty accepting federal official gratuity. Joseph Burton from the Senate, Kansas, compensated representation in a proceeding which the United States is interested in, a Republican. Frank Balance, the House of Representatives, North Carolina, 2004, convicted. His crime was mail fraud. Mario Biaggi, the House of Representatives from New York, mail fraud. Frank Boykin, House of Representatives, Alabama. Conspiracy to defraud the United States. Ernest Bramlett, House of Representatives, California. Payroll fraud to cover up kickbacks. Frank Brasco, House of Representatives, New York. Conspiracy to defraud the United States. This goes on for 20 pages. I should say 117 pages. Alexander Caldwell, Senator, Kansas, bribery. Thomas Carney, Senator, Kansas, bribery. Frank Clark, House of Representatives, Pennsylvania, mail fraud. Robert Frederick Collins, Louisiana, bribery. Conspiracy to defraud the United States. Duke Cunningham, House of Representatives, California, mail fraud. Charles Diggs, House of Representatives, Michigan, mail fraud. It doesn't matter what state you're in. It's all over the United States. This is goes on forever. This goes on forever. Where I could just keep reading them to you. But I'll take you to some up-to-date ones. Sheldon Silver. Have you ever heard of Sheldon Silver? Former Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, sentenced to 12 years in the federal penitentiary. There's our man Sheldon Silver right there. See him? 12 years, federal penitentiary for corruption. The Manhattan Democrat, one of the most powerful politicians in the state, before his arrest last year, was ordered to fork over nearly $5.2 million in ill-gotten gains and another $1.7 million in fines. The disgraced ex-politician was handed 2 prison terms by federal judge Valerie Caparoni, 12 years for the 6 criminal counts. That's Sheldon Silver. How about we go to Dean Skelos and his son? They were released 3 years early, of course. This is Dean Skelos and his son. Where are you? I can't get that in there. Dean Skelos and his son. The next job Dean Skelos gets for his son may be in the prison commissary, serving their fellow con, Shelley Silver. The former state Senate Majority Leader was convicted on Friday of bribery, extortion, and conspiracy charges for abusing his powerful post to enrich his son. The Manhattan federal court jury also convicted the son Adam, 33, of aiding and abetting in the scheme. The felonious father and the son face up to 130 years in prison when they were sentenced by a judge facing 130 years. They got a few years and got out 3 years early. Who knows how much time they even served? I can't even keep up with every case. How about jailed? And they said that the prisoners are the one that are bad, right? It's the men in prison that are bad. How about this guy right here? Right? Hevesy. Right? This is Hevesy, jailed former state controller. Alan Hevesy stole $1 million. He's dead now. Disgraced former state controller Alan Hevesy was denied his first attempt at parole Thursday and will spend at least another year behind bars. The once powerful Queens Democrat is serving 1 to 4 years. He stole $1 million and he got sentenced to 1 to 4 years. If I stole $100, they would give me 5 to 15 years. This is the corruption. This is the dirtbags. These are the people that you vote for. These are the people you shake their hand. How about state commissioner, parole commissioner, Chris Ortloff? This is the parole commissioner. This guy was sitting on the parole board when I went to parole. Okay? Chris Ortloff, the commissioner of the New York State Parole Board, was arrested. And he was tough on crime. The tough on crime state parole board commissioner faces up to life in prison. Of course he didn't get it. After trying to set up a sexual liaison with 2 young sisters, Chris Ortloff, 61, was arrested in an Albany area hotel late Monday by federal officials who found condoms, lubricant, vibrators, and a camera in his room. The 20-year Assembly Republican thought he was going to be meeting a 12-year-old girl and an 11-year-old sister who were dropped off by a parent. Instead, the knock on the hotel door came from agents of the New York State Police Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. He ended up getting 10 years for trying to sleep with a 10-year-old girl and an 11-year-old girl while he was the parole commissioner. And for some reason, this guy was still able to keep his pension. This guy still gets his pension. Explain that to me. But it's the men that are in prison that are the animals, right? It's the guys that are in prison that are no good. This is the guy that was deciding whether they stay in prison or not. So let me tell you what happened with this case, since I was personally involved. When I went to the parole board, everyone that went to his parole board, like out of the 30 guys, 26 of them were denied parole by Chris Ortloff. And so they filed an appeal saying that this guy was a child molester and was just arrested, and he's sitting in prison for 10 years. We want a new parole hearing because obviously we didn't get a fair hearing. And the response from Albany was that his personal life and his professional life did not conflict one another. But it's the guys in prison that are no good. You people that think that really need to listen to what I'm saying to you right now. Okay? Here's another parole officer arrested on corruption charges. Here's another parole commissioner arrested for stealing the computers out of work. Georgia parole officer arrested. New Hampshire parole officer arrested. Parole officer sentenced to federal prison for bribery. How about we go to this one? You guys remember Bernard Kerry? You remember Bernard Kerry? Bernard Kerry was the New York City Police Commissioner. He was in charge of the New York City Police Department, the whole police department in New York City. Bernard Kerry, a former New York police commissioner who rose to national prominence, was sentenced to 4 years in prison on Thursday after pleading guilty to 8 felony charges. 8 felonies. He was sentenced to 4 years and got out early. Pays to be the police commissioner. He had ties to the mob. I think it's fair to say that with great power comes great responsibility and great consequences, Judge Robinson said. I think the damage caused by Mr. Kerry is some of the ways immeasurable. Then why'd you only give him 4 years? If the damage he caused was immeasurable. How many guys do you think this police commissioner, Bernard Kerry, how many innocent people do you think he put in prison? How much paperwork do you think he fabricated? How many documents do you think he falsified? How much testimony do you think he gave that wasn't true? For people who couldn't afford private attorneys, for people out of the projects. Piece of shit. I mean, just on and on this goes. I can't give it enough. I can't. Here's another article. New York State has more corrupt officials than any other state. That is the title of this article. Out of any other state in the United States of America, New York State is the most corrupt. The senators, the congressmen, all the politicians, the mayors, the governors. I didn't write this. I think a man named Dan Clark wrote this. September 19th, 2016. New York has more corrupt officials than any other state. I mean, this is crazy. I was in jail with a judge. I was in jail with a judge named Gerald Garson, who was a judge for New York State Supreme Court. He was a matrimony judge. He handled divorces out of Brooklyn. I was in Mid-Orange Correctional Facility with him. I think it was probably about 2008, 2007, somewhere in that area. Between 2007, 2009, Judge Gerald Garson, I'll show you a picture of Judge Gerald. Jerry, everyone called him Jerry. He used to sit by the lake. There was a lake in Mid Orange. There was obviously a fence with razor wire between the yard and the lake. But Judge Jerry, I didn't know he was a judge at the time. He just looked like someone's grandpa. He used to sit by the lake smoking cigars. One day I got to talking with him, and he said to me, he didn't tell everyone. He said to me, I was a judge. I said, Jerry, what'd you get locked up for? He said, I was a judge. I said, "Were you really?" And I ended up Googling him. I had my family Google him to see if this guy's story was true. And he was a judge out of Brooklyn, and he was a corrupt judge. He was a crooked judge. I have to say, he was a nice guy, Judge Jerry. I liked him. But he was an older man. He's dead now. He passed away. But he was accepting bribes to make favorable decisions in divorce cases. Anyone could Google Judge Gerald Garson. I was locked up with him. He had some of the most power that I ever saw in the state prison system. He can make a phone call. Like, I'll give you an example. He was an older man. He went to the medical department. He didn't feel like the medical department was giving him the treatment that he needed. So he came back to the yard one day and he told me, watch this. And he picked up the phone and he called someone. And 15 minutes later, after he hung up the phone, they said over the speaker, Garson, report to the infirmary. Garson, report to the infirmary. He said, that's how you get it done. These were people of power. I think Gerald Garson, he ended up with 1 to 3 years or two. He didn't end up with a lot of time either. He made it home. He didn't die in the prison system. He made it home. I had a lot of conversations with Judge Jerry. He didn't tell everyone in there that he was a judge. He used to keep it quiet. He was sentenced to state prison, not federal prison. And you could Google him, Judge Gerald Garson. I did a lot of time with him. I did about a year and a half with him in Mid Orange. We were together. And my point is that these powerful people are corrupt. And don't point the finger at the guys that are incarcerated as being the animals. I always told you, and it goes all the way to the top. Like I mentioned in the other video, Bill Clinton was sleeping with Monica Lewinsky as he's president. This senator is sending pictures of his penis to a 15-year-old girl. This governor is sleeping with hookers. This judge. This is what happens when you give human beings power. I can do a video just on that, the psychology of what happens to human beings when you give them power. You think that they're good people because they have power. They become more corrupt when you give them power because they have no morals. They have no values. When you educate a man in mind and not in morals, you create a menace to society, right? This is what we have to offer. So please you have to realize that the people that are running the show, if you look at the mob, right? You look at the Mafia, you had John Gotti. John Gotti was the boss, right? Then you look at the government, Donald Trump is the boss, right? And if right now he is. And then you had the underboss for John Gotti, Sammy the Bull. And you got the underboss for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, right? Then after that, in the Mafia, you have the soldiers, right? The hitmen, right? The sergeant at arms. In the government, you have the congressmen and the senators, right? Then in the mob, you have the soldiers, the ones that go out, because you have captains in the mob, and that's the government's congressmen and senators. And then you have the soldiers, and that's the mayors and the governors in the government. The system is set up the same. The system is set up the same. I'll close with this. It's worth a sip. Let me take a sip of my Pepsi, my Coke. Think of this right here. This is a deep topic. We could go on it forever. I suggest you read a book called Things They Don't Want You to Know by Kevin Trudeau. Things They Don't Want You to Know. It was from the son of that piece of garbage leader in Canada, but the book is amazing. It's an older book, Things They Don't Want You to Know by Kevin Trudeau, and it explains the corruption, the deep, deep corruption of the system. Alcohol was illegal in this country. Before our time, right? I'm in my 50s, but before my time and back before my grandfather's time, There was a campaign of how dangerous alcohol was by the government. It's dangerous, it's a killer, it's a drug, and it's illegal. It was illegal. You weren't allowed to drink in the United States of America. They made it illegal because alcohol was responsible for murder, it was responsible for rape, it was responsible for robbery, it was responsible for assaults, it was responsible for child abuse, it was responsible for tons of crimes. People would get drunk and still to this day commit tons of crimes under the influence of the drug alcohol, and the government made it illegal. But then Prohibition came around, right? Al Capone said the people want this drug, so I'm going to give it to them. And Al Capone was making $30 million a year in the date of 1930, okay? And then the government said, we're losing out on all that money. We're losing out on the money, right? We need to make this legal because we need the profit, right? They didn't care that you would kill one another on it. They didn't care that it damages your brain. They didn't care that it damages your liver. They didn't care that people are molesting their children when they're drunk. They didn't care that people are running people over on the road. Massacre, a bloodbath. Alcohol causes a bloodbath massacre in this country every day. But the government said, we need the money. We want the money. And so they made it legal. So every time you buy a beer, every time you buy a bottle of wine, every time you go to the bar and get a drink, there's federal tax and state tax. And they get their money. Anytime you go into 7-Eleven and get a case of beer, into Wawa to get a case of beer, the government gets their cut. So what they did is they threw out their morals and their values and said, we want the money. Gambling was illegal in this country. Same thing. Gambling was illegal. You couldn't gamble. But then the mob took it over. They were running the numbers game. And then the government stepped in and said, wait a minute, we want that money. We don't care if people are losing their life savings. We don't care if people can't pay their mortgage. We don't care if people are gambling all their money away and can't feed their children. Right? They made it illegal. They said, but we don't care no more because we want the money. And they started the lotto. Every time you buy a scratch-off ticket, every time you play the lotto, every time you gamble, the government gets their cut. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. Now they're doing the same thing with marijuana throughout the country. For 50 years, we were told by the government, this is the gateway drug. This causes cancer. This will lead to people committing crimes. They were locking people up for marijuana, giving them 5 years, 10 years. I know guys that got 25 years for possession of marijuana because they had 10 pounds, 15 pounds. How many times did they use marijuana to rip people out of their car and search the car and lock them up and lock people up because they had a roach in their car, one joint, charging them with misdemeanors, giving them 80 days in jail, 120 days in jail, 1 to 3 years in jail. But then they couldn't control it. The criminal element took control of the marijuana. They were getting it out there anyway, so the government said, we want the money. But they said, let's do it smart. Let's first tell them that it's good for medical reasons. It's good for cancer patients. It's good for people with neuropathy, for diabetics. It's right. And they slowly eased it in. Not too slow. Then the next thing you know, after medical, it started to become recreational because they want the money. And then they open up shops. And now in order to open up a shop to sell marijuana, you got to pay the government. You got to pay the state. You got to pay for the permits. You got to give them the kickbacks. And then they started busting all the illegal people selling it, going into all the head shops because they're the drug dealers. They don't care if 13-year-olds are smoking weed, 15-year-olds are smoking weed because they're profiting now. And my point is this, is that they don't really care. They care about themselves. If they're human beings, they want more for themselves and less for everyone else. I mean, we can make this list go on forever. There really is no ending to this list. Rhode Island Governor Edward Dupree, convicted, 18 counts, accepting bribes in exchange for state contracts. He's getting paid off. The governor of Rhode Island, 18 counts, sentenced to 1 year. 1 year for 18 counts. How much time did he do on that 1 year? Illinois, Otto Kerner convicted. Bribery, conspiracy, tax evasion, perjury, sentenced to 3 years. No time served. Overturned. Case overturned after being convicted. Tax evasion, perjury, conspiracy, bribery. Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin, bribery. Charges dropped. Puerto Rican Governor Wanda Vasquez, bribery. Hasn't served one single day. How about district attorneys? The list of district attorneys, the people that put people in prison. Marilyn Mosby, perjury, 2 counts, mortgage fraud, no jail time. No jail time. I'd be 25 years. I would get 25 years. You would get 25 years, 15 years. Not one day in jail. Suffolk County DA, Thomas Spoda, corruption, sentenced to 5 years. Served less than 3. What's less than 3? 3 months? It is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. They are the sickest mafia that you could ever come across. Charging people in my neighborhood, the state, $17,000 to $20,000 a year in property tax. You have to give them $17,000 to $20,000 a year just in property tax. And they got their fingers in everything. They are in everything in every single area. The worst of the worst is the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration. I'll give you an example of how, just one little example. This is why you really need to read that book, Things They Don't Want You to Know. Let's say a cosmetic company comes out with a new deodorant, right? And the deodorant has aluminum in it. Aluminum is a very common ingredient inside of deodorant. And the reason that aluminum is inside of deodorant is because aluminum holds scent. All right. The particles of aluminum hold the scent. All right. And so aluminum causes cancer. That's not debatable. It's been proven by science over and over again that aluminum causes cancer. Okay. And so this cosmetic company goes to the FDA and they said, here's our new product. And the FDA says, well, before we approve it, we have to run some tests on it. And so they come back and they say, well, first they say, in order to run that test, it's going to be $12 million to run that test. So the cosmetic company cuts a check for $12 million, probably more than that. Now, people in the FDA just got $12 million to run some tests. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're really going to run some tests? They're going to run some tests that maybe cost $50,000. They're going to run some bullshit test, right? Then they come back to the cosmetic company and say, listen, you have too much aluminum in this. And aluminum causes cancer, so we're not going to approve that product. Okay, I'm gonna make the number up right now because I don't know what it is for sure. Let's say they come back and say you have 12% aluminum in there, and 12% aluminum is too high. It has to be under 6%. So the cosmetic company comes back and says, okay, here it is again. We now have it at 5.9%. We're under the 6%. Right? And now they say, okay, well, we need to run some more tests on it. It's going to be $24 million to run more tests. Okay, here's $24 million. Now they've received $36 million to test and approve a product, right? And then they come back and they say, okay, your product is approved because they got their $36 million that they split up between congressmen, senators, vice presidents, presidents. Everyone gets a piece of the pie. Not everyone, but everyone in a certain circle up there gets a piece of that pie, right? And so now the product goes out to us, the American people, right? A product that they wealthily know causes cancer, right? And they wonder why women are getting breast cancer because they're rubbing it right by their breast every single day. So they may have lowered the aluminum to 5.9%, but it's building up inside of the body because you're rubbing it on your armpits every day. You get me? On the back of your toothpaste, it says poison. Read the back of your toothpaste. Poison. If swallowed, contact a physician or poison control immediately. The stuff that you're putting in your mouth. So why did they approve that? They approved it because they're getting paid to approve products that kill us. I'm just scratching the surface again. Or the love of money is the root of all evil. 2 Timothy 2:15. The love of money is the root of all evil. They do not care about you. And as I said again, then they point the finger and say, that's the bad guy right there. The guys that are in prison, that's the bad guy. They're not the only bad guys. You want to build a building, you gotta pay for this permit. $5,000 for this permit, $8,000 for this permit. You want to have a food truck, you got to pay 5 different people to have a food truck. You got to pay the health inspector. You got to pay the food inspector. You got to pay for the state license. You got to pay for the state permit. It doesn't end. They are completely abusing us and taking advantage of us. They are a whole different circle. You're not part of their circle. You're waving the American flag and flying flags around and cheering like crazy. You're not even part of their circle. They don't even care about you. When was the last time a congressman or a senator asked your opinion on something? It's a joke. It's a joke. I'm wrapping this up. I'll be back with a prison story soon. Take care.